This is Mari Robeson of Love Lulu Creative, a podcast that supports and celebrates artists and creative entrepreneurs while giving back to the community in a unique and meaningful way. And this is episode number 20. I am really excited to kick off summertime with July's featured artist, Jennifer Allevato. She's one of my favorite artists. I've been following her on Instagram. She does beautiful florals and room interiors and landscapes. And I'm drawn to her work because it's so colorful and joyful. And her personality is very similar. She's very lovely. And we talk about a lot of things that really kind of have to do with the business side of being an artist, from creating a really functional, informative, gorgeous website to using platforms like Pinterest. We also talk about her artist in residence at the Torpedo Factory. We talk about working with bloggers, and her first big break is a really interesting story in itself. So we talk about that, and we get into even more things like licensing your art, how she was able to have her work in anthropology on the cover of HGTV magazine. The list kind of goes on and on. I mean, she knows what she's doing, and she's very lovely, and she's very talented, and it was really a pleasure to get to speak with her. So it's summertime, guys. I couldn't think of a better artist to feature. Pour yourself a glass of lemonade or iced tea and enjoy this really fun episode with Jennifer Allevato. Hi, Jennifer. I'm so happy to have you here today because I've been following you on Instagram, and I think your work is absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I'm really excited to hear about your creative journey and learn more about you.
Hi, Mari. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's we just talked a little bit earlier, but you've got great success, and you actually seem really fairly young to me. And so I'm really excited to talk to you. I mentioned to you earlier that this podcast is to kind of share with people how to get your art to market and put it out there in front of people and actually sell your work. And you seem to be doing that on a lot of different levels. And I just kind of want to ask you about your journey with that. But I want to go back to where you're from. So tell me about where you are from, where you're located.
Yeah, so I live in Alexandria, Virginia, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. We're like, oh my goodness, I don't know, like 3 or 4 miles from DC. You can actually see the Washington Monument from our front stoop. So
Wow, what a cool thing. That's so great. Are you always from there? Did you grow up there?
No, I didn't. So I grew up in Ohio until my junior year of high school. And then we moved to West Virginia, Charleston, West Virginia. Which is where I finished high school, and actually ended up going to college in West Virginia as well. And then I have lived several different places since then. But I have wanted to live in the DC area since the first time I visited, which I think was after 4th grade. And then I moved here after grad school finally, so in 2010.
Okay. It's a beautiful area. I'm okay. My mind is just spinning because I have so many questions I want to ask you.
No, for its humidity. So
well, it's funny because I'm in California. So like when you start talking about that, I'm like, oh, that's just such a different world, it's just night and day, but it just sounds really beautiful. So you went to college in Virginia? Is that what you're saying?
In West Virginia for undergrad. Yeah.
Okay. And did you study art there? Is that when it started, or did you start earlier than that?
No, I actually started, I would say, taking it seriously in high school. Once we moved in West Virginia, I had an amazing high school art teacher. She was, I would say, kind of old school in the way she taught. Like, she was very thorough with teaching like the foundations of design. And I took art for a full 2 years and did not once pick up a paintbrush because she believed you needed to understand drawing before you could paint. And she was wonderful. She passed away several years ago. But she was really great. I actually ended up testing out of the intro to design class in college because that's how thorough her class was.
She sounds like she was probably pretty classically trained in the fine arts. Yeah. Wow. That's wonderful. We have a lot of great teachers out there. Shout out to all the good teachers out there.
Yeah.
So then you went to college and did you major in art?
I ended up, majoring in art, but when I started, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I actually was a double major in art and psychology until my senior year. I ended up studying abroad in Florence for the second semester of my junior year, and only did art classes while I was there, which was amazing.
Oh my God. Okay. That's like a total dream to do that. How wonderful to be in Florence studying art. Wow.
The funny thing was, this is, I'm probably older than you think I am, but this was like 2003 when I was there. So, I hadn't really like researched the city that much when I went, and I did not know that it was overrun with like American or even just international students studying. Apparently that is also what Florence is known for. So
I was there a couple of years ago. I didn't really see any students there, but I guess I was there at a different, just traveling. So interesting that you would say that, but hey, you can't go wrong with like being surrounded by Michelangelo and all the wonderful artists that were there.
Obviously took Renaissance art history. It was great.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So that probably solidified you're like, yeah, I'm in. I got to be an artist now.
It sort of did. What it actually did was it made me not be able to finish my psych degree in 4 years. I would have had to stay another year. So I ended up dropping psychology and just focused on painting. I studied oil painting in college. So I would say the biggest thing was that I really wanted to do it. Like whenever my dad would ask me, what do you actually want to do for a job? I would tell him, I just want to paint. And he would say, that's not really a job. And back then it wasn't though. You had to teach and you could do art on the side, or, if you were, lucky enough to be the Damien Hirst or Julian Schnabel, you got into the elite art world. But, this was pre-Etsy. Like there wasn't really any way to have that independent career. And that was, I just didn't know how to make it happen.
So did you feel that the internet kind of coming of age around that time is what helped you to make a career, or?
Yes. I mean, several years later, but it definitely, gave me a career.
Okay. We'll talk about that in a little bit, because I think that's it. I think that's really interesting because it is a big shift. And now I really feel like it's such a great time for artists to be out there because of the internet. We have a lot of different resources that we never had prior to that. But I wanted to ask you, you went on and got your master's. Was it that you got it in costume design? Is that correct?
So I actually started a master's program in oil painting. And I was there for a full year, and it wasn't the right school and the right program for me. And they really focused on the fact that your MFA meant you were going to teach. And I love teachers and I have so much respect for them, but I've never felt a calling to do that personally. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like it's one of those things where, you really feel drawn to do it. And I honestly just never have. And so I still felt really lost. I didn't know what to do. I felt like they weren't, back then presenting me with other options for how to really go forward with your career. So I ended up leaving after the first year, and it was really, really hard for me because I felt like I was giving up on this one thing that I'd wanted for so long is really, I was very sad.
Mm.
So I still wanted a career in the arts somehow. And so I turned to my second love, which was theater. I had, done it in high school, and I actually was in a show in college just for fun. So I started looking into that, and I was like, okay, costume design. I can do this. It's a career. It has a more direct career path. So I was, just working like day jobs, and I moved back to where my parents lived, and I started working in a community theater there, and reached out to them and asked, if I could work on the costumes. And I started as an assistant, and then I was a co-costume designer, and then I moved up to costume designer, and kind of felt out if I liked it, and started to build up a portfolio, and then applied to grad schools with that.
Wow. I think it's fascinating. I think costume design is really amazing.
It is super fun. It's exhausting.
I bet. Wow.
Yeah. So I always joke that I talked myself into grad school. I didn't really have, I didn't have a theater degree background. But yeah, I went to the interview, and, I feel like I just kind of talked them into it. But yeah, I got into great school, the North Carolina School of the Arts. They're known for their drama program. But their design program also supports the drama school, and they have an opera program there, which, oh my goodness, it's amazing.
Wow.
It's so cool to work in opera. It was something I had never, ever considered before I went to school there. Yeah, I got into opera. And they also have a film school, and most films, especially student films, tend to be modern clothing because of budget.
Right.
But there are people who, students who reach out to them and work with that too. So it was 3 super intense years. And I didn't know if I could hack a career in it, because it's so intense. I mean, it's nights and weekends, and it's a lot. But I learned how to pattern and drape. I tell people like they do on Project Runway.
I love Project Runway, especially this new season. I thought it was really fun. How interesting. So, but then you didn't, when you graduated from that, did you go into that as a career, or did you choose to do something different?
So I went into it, yeah. So I moved with a friend to Alexandria, actually, and she was a scenic designer, and I was a costume designer, and we both found work in theater. There's actually a pretty decent theater scene in Washington, D.C. It's not just in New York. I mean, New York's bigger, but there I found jobs, and I worked in it for a year. I did wardrobe, and then I also designed and built a couple shows, and then assisted on a couple other ones. And after a year, I was just so exhausted.
Wow.
And I was just, I just wanted to make my own work.
Yeah.
And I started just doing it on the side for fun, like as a creative release, which is kind of funny to think about, working in a creative job and needing a creative release. But theater is 100% collaborative. And so you're not really working on personal projects. And that was what I really missed doing.
No, that makes complete sense to me. So you started painting on the side, and I love your paintings, beautiful florals, and I love your interiors, obviously. And so you started painting on the side, and then what? What happened next?
So I was doing painting, but I was too scared to show it since I had left school. I would say one of the best things that I had learned to do in theater grad school was you have to work really, really quickly. Like when you're designing costumes, you have to whip out, a dozen or 3 dozen or 100 renderings pretty quickly. So I learned how to work fast and in new mediums because previously studying oil painting, they take forever to dry.
Right.
So
And you are really prolific. You have a lot of work out there. Are you not working are you working in acrylics?
Oh, so I work in acrylics. Yeah. And that's
Okay.
what I fell in love with at theater grad school, was learning how to work in acrylics. So I was doing like tiny embroideries and mixed media pieces, and I was kind of secretly doing painting and not showing anybody. And once I felt like I was comfortable with what I was doing, I decided to open an Etsy shop. This was, I think it was the end of 2011, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And Etsy was still fairly new. I think it had only been around for, I want to say like 3 or 4 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And my first 6 orders were from friends and family and coworkers.
Always start there.
My 7th order was from a stranger, and it was like, oh my gosh.
Right? That's the best feeling. I think every artist on the planet, it's like, someone I don't know bought this from me.
Oh my goodness. It makes a total difference.
Yeah. True validation.
Yeah. So I started to build up a little more confidence and put like some tiny watercolor paintings in there, and eventually moved up to acrylics and then working larger. So that wasn't even until that was a good year, I would say, after I had started selling on Etsy before.
So you were still working at your day job, and then you were doing that in the evening.
Yeah, I was in a day job until the end of 2013.
So what was the moment when you said, okay, it's time to leap and I'm going to be a full-time artist?
Well, I feel like I cheated a little bit. My husband actually got a new job, and we moved to Michigan for 2 years. And he got better job, and we lived in a place where the cost of living was so much lower. So basically, we could afford for me to not have to have a day job. So I really jumped in and focused on trying to figure out how to make it a career. I took a lot of commissions starting off. It's just such a great way to, get kind of guaranteed sales.
That is a good idea.
Yeah.
Or even supplement when you're working on a large body of work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did you go about doing that? Because were you using the internet at that time, or was that just word of mouth? Were you showing your work anywhere physically?
We moved like right before the holiday season, so it was all pretty much online. And
this was through your Etsy shop?
Yeah, still through Etsy.
Okay.
And then I, locally started doing some shows. I had done one previously in Virginia before I moved, but I hadn't really fully dove into that yet. So I started doing more in-person shows and working on some larger pieces and applying to jury shows and galleries. And I learned what minted was, and they minted works they license work, but they do it differently than any other place that I've ever seen. They work through design contests. So entered my work into some of their design contests. And
do they still do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they work, they do, oh my goodness, so many contests a year for different things. Their biggest ones, they're holiday cards, but they also do fine art prints. And it's literally by popular vote. And then they also do editor picks. So I started doing that and, licensed some pieces, which is just great extra, what's the word I'm looking for?
Kind of supplemental income. Yeah, it's passive income that comes in. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Licensing I think is really great if you have that that style that lends itself to it, it's a wonderful way to give some longevity to your art pieces and really get your name out there too.
Oh, absolutely. That was a big thing for me, to get on there.
So
And
Minted was kind of the first internet, other than being on Etsy, was kind of the first place where you were able to sell your work online.
yeah, it was, I did, I got a piece or two. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember now. It's been a few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Art print contests. And then once when you're invited to open what they call a minted shop, and you can upload, your own designs too.
Oh
Um,
gosh, that's great.
yeah, so I did try to do I dabbled in a little more illustration and stationery design, and I got a couple pieces in one of their Christmas holiday photo card contests. And like had to teach myself really rudimentary illustrator skills.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness, not my forte. But yeah, I did a little like taught myself hand lettering and worked at that for a very long time, and kind of was adding that into my repertoire for a while, until it got to the point where I realized it was too hard to do both. So I kind of had to choose if I really wanted to focus on fine art or if I really wanted to do more of the design side.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there were two of me, I would do both, but there just were not enough hours. I felt like and back and forth between mediums. So yeah, so I was like, you know what? Fine art has always been what I wanted to do. So
yeah. So you made that choice. I think that's a great story. So, oh my goodness. So you were doing Minted and you were doing your Etsy shop and it's all going really great. And then what was next after that? Because I see that you have your work at is it Artfully Walls? What's it called? Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did that come about? And are you still doing that?
Yeah. So after like almost exactly 2 years in Michigan, we moved back to Alexandria, Virginia, and I was able to have a space in our home to make a really dedicated studio space, because I wanted to paint larger and focus a little bit more on more of the fine art. And I actually was trying to figure out, looking at careers of other artists that I really admired and like, okay, how did they do that? How, you see like artist licensing with different companies. And I saw some artists selling through Anthropology, and I was like, how did they get on there? And I saw that Artfully Walls was curating art print collections with Anthropology, and I was like, okay, I'm going to apply to Artfully Walls because I want to be in Anthropology.
Sure.
Literally the reason I did it.
Mm-hmm.
So they work differently from Minted. You apply and then they decide whether or not they want to accept you as an artist, and then they even individually choose what pieces they're going to sell. So it's very curated.
And again, you have to have it sounds like you have to have a decent body of work to submit for that.
Yeah, I think so. It's always good to show breadth and depth, I think, anytime you're applying to anywhere. Same with galleries, they want to see that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I emailed them and sent some pieces and they said yes. And then after, I can't remember how long I was on there. I want to say 6 months. They were like, hey, do you want to license this piece to Anthropology? And I said, yes, absolutely.
You're like, well, I don't know. Let me think about that. I'll give you a call back.
I think I screamed and ran and told my husband, and then I was like,
that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I really like that those venues are supporting artists in doing that. I think that's wonderful. And that they're not going overseas and doing stuff, that they're actually looking and supporting artists like you. And I think that's great.
Oh, absolutely. I think it makes a huge difference. And, it's just another way that sounds weird, but the internet has helped, independent artists really be able to make careers that they want.
Right. Isn't that really interesting? So I wonder if now, and I need to ask the colleges, like, are they teaching this? Because that's kind of why I wanted to get into this on the podcast was because of the scholarships with the younger students that are going into art school. It's like, you're going to learn all kinds of great things on how to make your art, but it's a whole nother world to be a business owner and sell your art. And now there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's licensing. You can have your online shop. You can do collaborations. You can do commissions. You can do galleries. There's so many different things that were absolutely non-existent when I graduated from college. And I like that you're sharing this because it's really helpful information for those, and it's inspiring to see someone like you with a beautiful, beautiful work, and you're able to put it on different platforms. It's exciting. I think it's a great time for artists right now.
It's so cool, and it's almost overwhelming because there are so many opportunities. But it's truly amazing.
Do you ever feel like, because there's so many opportunities, and I know this gets to me, it's like, you got to be constantly posting and posting and posting. And it's like, I need just time to create. And especially when you're working on large pieces of artwork that take months sometimes, or do you feel because of the medium that you're working in, it's easy for you to just be very prolific in putting out pieces?
Oh, I get distracted by the internet and social media all the time. It's terrible. If I could hire somebody out, a lot of artists I've heard, like, oh, I want someone to do my packaging. No, I want someone to do all the internet stuff for me. I would love that. That would be great. Because it is really easy to get, sucked into Instagram or Pinterest and just, find all these beautiful, inspiring images. And, you see other artists and you're like, you're amazing. Let's be friends. And
exactly. I know. That's how I feel about this podcast. It's like, oh my gosh. Artists.
I love listening to podcasts while I work. That's the one great thing.
Yeah. So do you use Pinterest as a form to sell your artwork? That's one platform I kind of fell off of. I feel like I just go down a rabbit hole there and I can't stay focused.
Oh my goodness. It's so easy to accidentally spend a very long time on Pinterest.
Right? I was with Jennifer, or I think it was Jennifer, and we were talking about this, and it's like, and now I know what I'm going to cook for the rest of the year. I can't remember for the life of me why I came on here.
So many accidental recipes. I'm like, wait.
I'm never going to make
another cookie recipe. This is not why I came here. I think the great thing about Pinterest is that a lot of social media, their goal is to keep you on their app, and Pinterest's goal is to get you off their app. Like, I've listened to a lot of podcasts actually about Pinterest, and like the well-performing pins are the ones where somebody clicks through to, the article or whatever was pinned and then stays there. That means that it was a good pin. They found what they were looking for. So I love that about Pinterest. And I think it's a great place to find inspiration. And so on the same side, it's a great place to put your work because other people are looking for it. And I remember hearing a few years ago, and I don't know if this is still accurate, but I would assume it is, but it's something like 75% of pins on Pinterest are repins, like just repinning what's already there in the feed. So if you're not putting your work on Pinterest, then probably nobody else is either. So, as an artist, as a maker, you really need to go out of your way to make sure that you're showing up on there because it really is it's a discovery engine. So put it out there for people to find.
There you go. Again, that's really, really helpful. So I want to go back to your website. Do you still have an Etsy shop?
I don't. I closed my Etsy shop last year. I was going back and forth as to whether I should have kept it open through the holiday season.
Sure. Yeah.
Business mind. But yeah, so I had a website that was almost sort of a landing page, I guess. And if you clicked shop, it had forwarded to my Etsy shop. But I wanted something that was a little bit more cohesive. Everything was there. I could really personalize it and, be more about my brand. And as great as I think Etsy was in helping me start my career, I started to get frustrated that I couldn't really personalize it.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it was very hard to sell larger, more expensive pieces. Like I had never sold anything, I think, over like $375. So I think it is, I think it is totally possible to have a great career on Etsy, but what I sold so much of on there were art prints. The smaller, easier sales.
Right.
Yeah, but wanting to, shift away from that, more illustration and commission and work on my own work, larger pieces and pieces that I felt more comfortable submitting to galleries. I guess I'm kind of old school in that way because I do like doing juried shows. I don't know.
No,
I know a lot of modern artists don't, but I think they're fun.
I actually really, really love that. And for those of you who are younger, I think you have a really beautiful website now. I went to it. I believe it was Shopify. Is that?
Yes, I'm Shopify.
Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. It's very clear. It says right off the bat what you offer, that you do gifts and stationery, that you do prints, and you do original paintings. It's beautiful photography. But then you have your resume, you have your artist statement. It's so clean, and it really gives a good overlook of who you are as this artist and how they can purchase from you. And I just think I give it an A+.
Well, thank you very much.
I see a lot of, in fact, I'm inspired for sure about it, that it's really, really well done. And I did look at your resume, and you do a lot of shows. And that's also something I think that's important to be posting about if you want to stay going in that gallery route.
Yeah, it's I do feel like I'm caught a little bit between two worlds because of like the gallery and then the online. So
that's okay. I think that's just I think it's just the new place that we're at right now. That's why not? Why wouldn't you, try to be monetizing your business in both avenues? If it's working for you, that's perfect. It's a perfect platform. So, and it looks great. It doesn't look confusing. I'm telling you, I think your website is beautiful. So everybody go take a look at it. I'll have the link on the show for sure.
Oh
but
man,
there was a thing
great site.
Pardon me?
So Shopify is a great site to use.
Did you do it by yourself, or did you have somebody help you with that?
I did it by myself. So I did purchase a template. They have like the ones built in, and then they have extra ones you can purchase for like a flat fee. But a lot of it's honestly my photographer. I cannot state how much getting professional photo shoot transform. Can transform the look of your work and everything. But yeah, so it's Squarespace is the same way, but it's pretty much drag and drop. It took me way longer to build it than I thought it was going to. It was, I believe, over a month because I'm just not super proficient at the internet stuff, web building. I've never really taken like a graphic design class or anything. It was still kind of new when I was in college, and I took like a photography class, and we had like one assignment where we had to use Photoshop, and that was it. So still new. But yeah, I just got to the point where I wanted to sell larger work, and I wanted everything to be very much me and I could have control over the space. So yeah, I decided to open my own website last year with a shop and kind of merge off Etsy, so that I could, and I also think, given the fact that I do gallery shows, having your own website just ups that little level of professionalism a little bit, because it also operates as your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of, if you're looking at more, I don't know if it's rude of me to say old school, but artists who've, been working for years and their websites really just are a portfolio, because that's, I would say, if you were like in the middle of your career in the early 2000s, that's what your website was. It was really just a portfolio. You probably weren't selling from it. So yeah, it's got to do both now. And, stepping out on my own was the way to do that. So.
Well, I think you did a really beautiful job. I really do. I think it's really lovely, and it looks very professional, and it is professional. You've been doing it for a while, so I think that's great. And also, I think you have a ton of press, like you've done HGTV and Glitter Guide and Apartment Therapy. Well, let's talk about bloggers. It seems like you've been really successful with having your product in their spaces. Is that something that they came to you, or did you approach other bloggers and say, I've got this body of work, would it work with what you're doing, or how did that go about happening?
It's been both, actually. So here's kind of the funny story of the first time. The first large blog I was ever on was Young House Love.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a big one. That's kind of a big one.
So this was back in 2012, and I had just done my first in-person art market. And we were living in Alexandria, and I did a show down in Richmond, and I was so excited. I got in this show, and I mostly had, I was still doing, the little cute embroideries left over from my days of sewing, and small watercolors and mixed media pieces. And my husband now, he was my fiance at the time, came with me to help me because he's much more outgoing than I am to help me sew. And they were, people, it's a great show, and there were a lot of people walking around taking pictures. And I just remember him saying to me, why are people taking pictures? And I said, oh, I don't know, maybe they're bloggers. And a couple weeks later, I was at work, and a friend of a friend who I had met several times called me at the store, and she was like, oh my gosh, your work is on Young House Love. And I said, what is that?
What? Oh.
And she was like, you have to look it up. Just look it up right now. So I looked up the website, and they had taken a little picture of, I was doing these like little custom state hoops, and they featured my, a picture of my work on there, and like linked to my Etsy shop. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I checked my email, and I had all these orders pouring in.
Wow.
Freaking out. And I also subsequently fell in love with their blog because I also obsessed with interior design.
Awesome. Oh, that's
so it was like totally random. And I got hits to my Etsy site for years from that tiny little mention. I still get like forwarded hits from it, even though I don't do the embroideries anymore. And so that was huge. So yeah.
That's really interesting because a couple of the different artists that I've spoken with, and even myself, we've had I've had my stuff on the Today Show and stuff, and you think you're going to get all these orders and stuff, and it's like, wah, wah. But then here's this, this blogger situation, and then it just turned into sales for you. That's really funny.
I've had both experiences. This one just, I don't know. They're just, I feel like they're one of those couples where they say like, this is great, and then people buy it.
Right. They have, that's wonderful. And you're like, I can't make these fast enough.
Oh my gosh. I literally was I did not concentrate at work that day. I like rushed home freaking out. I was like taking new pictures of things. Let's just say I was not set up for that type of business at that time. So it also made me think like, okay, you need to be prepared. You need to know how to like have your systems in place. But yeah, that was great. And I literally remembered calling my parents and saying, can I quit my job now? And just they're like, maybe not yet.
Is that when you kind of like it happened? Oh no, it was because when you moved. That's right. But that certainly helped, I'm sure.
Yeah. They were like, let's see if it keeps up. Then you can, take the leap. No school loans to pay off.
Oh, that's so
but
cool.
Yeah, a lot of the other ones have been because my work is licensed, which is amazing. Like, it's so funny when that happens too. Actually, earlier this year, I had a friend and she was like, oh my gosh, congratulations, your work's on the cover of HGTV magazine. And I was like, what?
Wow.
I had no idea. It was one of the prints that I licensed through Artfully Walls. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I had no idea.
Wow, that's crazy. And that you just find out this, well, at least you've got good friends out there.
I know. Right?
Looking out for you.
It's very sweet.
You're probably in 10 other things that you didn't know about, but
that's literally always like the thing in the back of the mind, like, am I not seeing my work somewhere? And, they are supposed to get permission, but as these are licensed prints, they don't actually have to get permission from me. They get permission from,
right.
the licensing. So, I would say it's a little, not upsetting, but, I would like to be told, but I guess, I'm sure like sites like Mint and Artfully Walls, they show up everywhere. Mm-hmm. So my guess is that they can't even like keep up with it. And I've heard from artists who've had their, original work, for things like TV covers. It's not even guaranteed that it's going to show up. You don't even know until like the magazine comes out. Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah, I had a really interesting conversation with a friend of mine who is the head of the interior design community. And I know I've seen my art and things and not been credited. And she's like, well, but Mari, then you have to credit the lamp company and the rug company and the sofa company. And it's like, this is the interior designer's work right here. And your art just happens to be in it with that lamp and that rug and that. So, I kind of went, I get that. Where do you draw the line? Like, where do you stop with like that? But on just a personal level, it'd be nice to know so you could share it. And
I know, right? Like,
yeah,
you got really awesome photos of my work in a space. I want to see.
I want to use that. Yeah, we all gotta help each other here.
Exactly. Yeah, and then that happened actually again like a month ago. One of my Instagram followers tagged me in a post and said, isn't this your work? And I looked and it was the print that I have at Anthropology, and it was in a design that a designer had used in the UK for the it's the Royal Horticultural Society Flower Show, the Chelsea show. I guess it's like the most famous. I know, it was like totally random. Designer Selena Lake had used my Anthropology print, and she was actually very sweet because I think she'd noticed in the comments when I replied back, oh my gosh, that's my piece. Then she actually tagged me. In 100% her defense, she just bought it from Anthropology. So she
right.
Has
that's what I'm talking about. Like, they don't necessarily know that. But, there is a little bit of education out there, and I hope this podcast will get out there to more people to be aware of that. There was somebody who really worked hard on this painting that created this piece, and you're showcasing it in such a beautiful way. It's just a nice thing if you can just tag them. It's not, but some people just don't even know to think to do that. You know what I mean? They just don't even think about it. So there's a little bit of that education. And that's when you can make a comment, a soft comment, like, oh my gosh, this is exciting, instead of being like, that's my piece and why am I not credited?
Oh
People
yeah.
just don't know. Like, they just don't know.
No, absolutely. And it happens, and it's, I don't think it's not the same as someone stealing your work. It's
Whole another podcast.
Yeah, it's just, it's
Yeah.
like, hey, that's my piece. Awesome.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's true. And sometimes you forget because you're so in the work and you're like putting something together and you're like, oh no, I really do want to like tag that person I just forgot, so a little reminders. It's okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what DMs are for, right?
Exactly. So you also been doing this really cool thing. I saw it on your Instagram stories, which, by the way, this is something else I think is really good to share to the people who are younger artists that are coming out. Your Instagram stories are really a beautiful way to show a snippet of what you're all about. It's like your story, and I think that allows people to kind of get behind the scenes and get to like you and get to know you and be more apt to want to purchase your art. And I saw that you were doing, was that almost like an artist in residence? Was that? The Torpedo, what is it called? The Torpedo Factory?
The Torpedo Factory, yes. So,
was that really a torpedo factory?
It was.
Wow.
Yeah.
So interesting.
It started in World War I. It actually has its 100-year anniversary this year.
Wow.
I know. It's crazy. It's right on the Potomac River in Old Town Alexandria. But yeah, last year I joined into the Torpedo Factory Artists Association, which was amazing. And that makes you eligible basically to have a studio at the Torpedo Factory Art Center. The Artists Association, I won't go completely into it because I could talk about it for a very long time, but the association, basically a woman had Marion Van Landingham. She's a working artist still. She's in her 80s. But she had the idea to turn this former torpedo factory into this artist center with open studios in the 70s, I believe. I want to say 1974. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, and it's basically been an art center ever since then. It's gone through a couple renovations. So it's 3 floors, has 82 studios and a bunch of galleries. And so I juried in, which made me eligible to lease a studio there. But I'm very introverted and I really like working at home in like yoga pants. So
you are my soul sister.
So I have to not have a permanent studio there, but I have sublet studios from other artists several times. So yeah, I just did it again in May, and oh my goodness, the views are amazing. They have giant windows and you get like the light off the river, and it's great. But yeah, so your studio is open during their open hours, so people can just walk in. It's free and look at your work. Buy it if they want to. It's great.
Well, that's such a great use of renovating a space and to making it something like that. Really, really love that idea that she did that. And it just looks so fun on your stories, what you were doing there. So sometimes you got to get out of those yoga pants,
I know.
And go talk to some people.
I really do.
Because it sounds like you and I are very similar. Yoga pants and cats. So tell me about your cats, because you're adorable.
Yeah, so we have 2. One is mine, and the other one's my husband's. We got
okay. Territorial.
I mean, I've had my kitty for 13 years.
That's the orange one?
Yes. And when I was living in South Carolina, found him under a car as like 4-week-old.
Oh.
Little tiny, I know. And I had always wanted an orange kitten. It's so cheesy. Do you remember the movie Oliver and Company? The Disney movie from it was not a popular movie. I want to say it was like the very early 90s. But it's like a take on Oliver Twist, but it was about a tiny orange tabby cat.
Aww.
And the main character is named Jenny. So I felt very connected to this movie and had always wanted a cat. And yes, so he's like a little grumpy old man, but I love him. He's very, very sweet to me. Yeah, he's also, I would say, an introvert. So
and it's so funny. They love to paint. They love to be around when you're painting too.
Oh my goodness, yes, they love to sit on paper.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why cats love that. And then my husband, after we had started dating, he met my cat, and it actually led him to get a cat, his own cat.
Oh, he's like, I want one.
So his cat was also adopted, but his cat's the polar opposite of my cat, and he is the most social thing in the entire world. And if you meet him, he's instant best friends with you.
Oh,
hilarious. So they're both very, very sweet. But yeah, we have 2 cats.
I think it would be so great to just do an Instagram account on artists and their cats.
So, okay. So
I wonder if it probably already exists.
This is super embarrassing. But when I had just started selling on Etsy years ago, I decided to start a blog, like on Blogspot. And it actually started off as a blog about the cats. I started merging my art in there eventually, but and then like changed the name of it. But yeah, it literally started as a cat blog, and then I was like, "What am I doing?" So,
well, yeah. Some accounts have done quite well. Some cat accounts.
Yeah. But yeah, so they show up on Instagram stories, and
yeah, they're so fun. He's really, really cute. So I always like to kind of wrap things up with asking you to share your advice to your younger self. So let's throw it back to when you were just graduating from getting your MFA, and what would have been some really helpful words of advice if back then that somebody would have told you?
Oh man, to just keep making work. You know, just keep doing it. I think, a lot of people ask, how do you find your style? Or can you teach me to paint like you? And I want to say, like, you don't want to paint like me. You want to paint like you. I think that it's personal the way handwriting is. It's just going to come out of you. But you find it by just making so much work. And eventually this style develops that feels really comfortable for you. And it's probably going to change throughout your lifetime, and that's fine. But that's how you do it. You just keep making work, and so much of it's going to be bad, so much. But eventually stuff's going to start getting better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just that working on that craft, like just doing it almost every day, really, if you can, just for a half an hour, just get in the work. That's really good advice. And then what would be your the best advice that was ever given to you?
That selling your work as an independent artist makes you a business owner, and you need to treat it like a business.
Who told you that? That's really good advice.
You know what? It took me forever for that to really sink in. I kept saying, like, I'm not a small business owner. I don't own a business, but that's what it is. You're an independent, independent artist. You're a sole proprietor. You are selling your work. It's more than just taking sales tax and giving it to the state. There's so much more that goes into it. You really have to be aware of, everything that all other businesses are aware of, the marketing, the bookkeeping, there's a lot, and
tracking all your expenses. It's crazy how you like, oh, I just bought some paint over here and some canvas, and it's like, that really adds up.
Yeah, it does. And if you get to the point where you can hire out a bookkeeper, do it. But when you're starting out, you're going to have to do it yourself. And if you can take any business classes in college on the side, do it, because having that knowledge is so useful, and it's so useful in so many, areas of life. There are, business is just it's a smart move.
Yeah, that's really, really, really good advice if you are in college too. I know it sounds so boring. My daughter is a graphic design major, and I'm like, I know that sounds really boring, but you got to take it.
Yeah,
You have to take that business class, and you have to know how to do those
marketing,
things.
business basics. I mean, these are things you're going to have to understand
Mhm.
in order to sell your own work. And if you're a dancer, you're going to have to understand contracts, and or if you want to teach, you need to understand how to, like the legalities of, opening a studio. And if, these are things obviously you can look into later as your career develops, but, it's really good to come in with a base knowledge and not just be clueless. And I was clueless when I
Mm.
started. I got so many books. I just poured over them trying to figure it out. And, I feel like I was learning as the internet was developing this career. And yeah, wow, I
Yeah.
wish somebody had been like, stop taking the psych classes. You're not actually
You're
psychology.
never going to use those. Actually,
They're
you
really
probably do use them.
interesting. Yeah, take business class instead. So yes, that's my advice.
That's really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And gosh, I'm so glad I really had the opportunity to talk to you, because I love your work. It's really very joyful and happy. And I actually could ask you another hour of questions, but we're going to wrap it up here. And I just really appreciate you sharing so generously. And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Mari. It's been so great speaking with you. And, I hope something of what I said is useful to someone.
All of it is helpful, really. I mean, it is kind of a mystery out there. Like, how are these artists doing this? And, it's really great that I think people think that artists, we are solo, we work solo, that we don't want to collaborate with each other. But every artist I've ever met has just been so excited to talk to each other. And it's like, oh yeah, how did you do that? How did you do this? And this is how I did this, and it's like, gosh, why haven't we been talking to each other?
I know, you need to, even if you want to work alone, which is totally fine, you do need some kind of community.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. Yay. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this podcast and you'd like to support it even more, you can join me over on patreon.com/Mari Robeson and become a patron of mine. If you're a patron of mine, you'll receive bonus episodes every month, only for patrons. You'll also receive 20% off all the merchandise in my online shop, marirobeson.bigcartel, and you will be receiving free printables every month that will be of my artwork, and they're some really fun things. You can follow along on Instagram and you can see what I'm creating just for my patrons. I would deeply appreciate it. It would help me keep the lights on, and it would help me pay all the fees that it takes to put together a podcast like this, so that I can keep supporting all the artists, keep bringing you great information, keep paying it forward to the next generation of artists. It's just a wonderful thing, and I would really deeply appreciate your support.